Welcome to our August 25th Douglas County Board of County Commissioners meeting. We want to welcome those of you who are with us here at the Douglas County Courthouse, as well as those of you joining us online. I do just want to pass on a bit of information regarding how we'll run our hybrid meeting. All participants will be entered into the meeting with their audio muted, meaning the commission and the public will not be able to hear you. Presenters will be unmuted when their agenda item comes up. We ask that all online presenters use good conference call etiquette and mute their line when not speaking and introduce themselves each time they speak. If you're coming to the mic up front, please press the button and see that the light turns green before you start speaking. If you have public comment on an agenda item or under regular public comment, please come to the front of the room if you're in the courthouse or use the raise your hand function on Zoom. Staff will call on you and unmute you. We ask that speakers give their name and address for the minutes. All public comments should be kept to 3 minutes or under. I'll give you a 30-second warning, and we may cut off your mic if you continue to go over 3 minutes. The county reserves the right to shut off the microphone and remove any speaker from the meeting if they are vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. A recording of this meeting will be available on our YouTube site after the meeting. Okay, we will begin with our consent agenda. Would either of the commissioners like to remove anything from the consent agenda?
Commissioners, if I could, I do want to point out that we had a last minute addition to the consent agenda today. Item 19, a Class B fireworks display permit. Because of the cancellation of our meeting last week, there was some confusion as to the timelines. And we wanted to get this fireworks permit on your agenda.
Thank you. Does that change either of the commissioners' thoughts?
Can we just have a minute to review? I did not see that, and I just like a minute to review it real quick. Okay.
Do we have anyone joining us here in the courthouse who would like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Do we have anyone joining us online who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda for additional conversation? Okay.
This is Commissioner Reed. I move to approve today's consent agenda items 1.1 through 1.9.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we will move on to general public comment. Do we have anyone here in the courthouse today for general public comment, meaning public comment not on an agenda item? Okay, do we have anyone joining us online for general public comment? Okay, we will move on to our regular agenda. We will start with agenda item 3.1, conduct a public hearing of the 2022 operating budget, the 2022 to 2026 capital improvement plan, and exceeding the revenue neutral rate. Sarah, do you have a presentation for us?
Commissioners, Budget Manager Cammie Owens is going to be joining us in the panel for the public hearing on the proposed 2022 operating budget. Commissioners, I'll let Cammie say a few words about what this step in the process means for us, and really we just stand for any questions the commissioners have at this point. So Cammie?
Yes, good evening, commissioners. Tonight we have the proposed 2022 Douglas County budget. It's an annual process that we approve every August to hold a public hearing for any comment and adopt the county budget. The attached document is the budget in the state format that the reporting is required for. The budget includes all decisions that the commission agreed to during our budget hearings in early July, with a proposed mill levy of 47.438. New this year is legislation that requires a resolution if exceeding a revenue neutral rate. The revenue neutral rate is defined as the same amount of tax dollars collected in the prior year. The proposed budget does have a mill levy that exceeds the revenue neutral rate, and a resolution is required to be passed that is attached as well. I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Cami. Do we have questions from commissioners? Okay, we will open this item up for public comment. If you have public comment, please come forward. Just a reminder, when you get to the front of the room, please press the button so it turns green at the microphone. State your name and address for the minutes. Then you'll have 3 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second warning and we'll turn off the microphone if you exceed the 3 minutes.
My name is Peter Grassel, Grassl. I reside at 972 East 1900 Road, Eudora. I'm asking the commissioners to consider the current economic conditions presiding over the county and the country. And as evidence, the unemployment rate went up in June in Douglas County. The Federal Reserve has changed over the past week their opinion about the outlook of the economy and now is looking at no further interest rate increases. And that to me suggests that there could be weakening in the economy, and that should be taken into account as it affects those who are not doing as well economically. And in particular, you add in the city of Lawrence raising utility rates, and there will be a trickle-down effect to people within the city. So overall, I think the county is the last stop to adjust the spending that affects all residents of Douglas County. And you should consider that perhaps there could be a decline of dollars and perhaps difficulty in making rent payments, et cetera. And also one last thing, food inflation is incredible. So there's such a squeeze going on that you ought to consider perhaps postponing or deferring some of the proposed spending. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else in the courtroom for public comment on this item?
My name is Ron Thacker. I live at 582 North 1850 Road. I'd like to point out that in particular, the mill levy affects real estate and property taxes. Inflation is going up. Home values are at record highs right now. But our income has not changed. We're on a fixed income and inflation and then taxes get added on top of that. I realize the government has more bills to pay. But at the same time, those of us who did not have an income increase cannot afford higher taxes. I'd like you to consider that, commissioners, when you vote today. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else in the courthouse? Please come forward.
Okay, sorry. My name is Roger Leonard. I live at 958 East 1900 Road, Eudora, Kansas. And I'd like to reiterate the same sentiment the two gentlemen that preceded me made. Taxes are going up, and income is not. Our cost of living is increasing due to inflation, and that's putting a very big burden on your population in your county, this county, our county. From 1997 until today, Douglas County has increased tax revenues by 399%, the biggest increase in any county of Kansas. In the same period, inflation has only gone up 53%. The tax burden on taxpayers is increasing 7 times faster than the general cost of living. And we have this trajectory, and this proposal to increase the mill levy, in addition to the inflation increase in the tax burden, is continuing that trend, which is not right, especially when your expenditures are going up like this. You need to spend less so that we can get within our tax base. And you're not, but from what I see, you're not doing that with this proposal tonight. So I'm very disappointed in that. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else for a comment on this item? Do we have anyone online for comment on this item? Please use the raise your hand function if you'd like to comment on Zoom. Okay, we will bring this back to commissioners for discussion. Oh, I do see the hand. Jill, would you please let them into the meeting?
Catherine Ellsworth, I'm going to move you into the panel. Give me just 1 minute. Catherine, go ahead and unmute and provide your public comment.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't think I'd be the only one. I want to reiterate what the previous in-person speakers have said. It's probably not the best time to be taking on an increase in property taxes with COVID and the lack of representation of the rural areas, as you know, on the commission. And it's kind of a divisive time to be pitting rural and outlying areas against the urban areas. It seems like maybe once we're through all this, it would be a better time to take on this issue. There's a couple things. The fire, the largest part of the budget is the fire and medical services. I don't know how much actually goes to fire suppression. I talked to the fire department today in Eudora. Oh, I'll tell my address at the end. Generally, the Lawrence Fire Department does not help with their fire suppression. It's usually Eudora, and then the township, the Eudora Township, and then Wakarusa. For medical services, they have the ambulances. They are first responders, but the ambulance does come from Lawrence. This year, they've had about 800 calls, and 70% of those result in medical transportation. So that would be 560. So I think for the return on investment, the citizens in the outlying areas just aren't getting that. And the other issue is that the 1.1 million for salary raises for the county employees. Well, the people who own property also are facing financial difficulties. So again, this year might not be the best year to proceed with an increase in taxes. And my address is 2609 South Fir Terrace, Eudora, Kansas. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no additional hands raised for public comment, we will bring this back to commissioners for discussion. I do just want to start by thanking everyone who is here with us in the courtroom today, as well as those of you online who made public comment. We did spend quite a bit of time discussing this budget. We had multiple days of budget hearings and deliberations. All of those are available on our YouTube site if you'd like to go back and listen to the specifics of these conversations around the budget. Our last speaker did bring up what is the largest increase that we saw in our budget this year, which is the Lawrence Douglas County Fire Medical. Our fire medical agreement was renegotiated with the city of Lawrence, and this is an agreement that covers fire for within the city of Lawrence, but emergency medical for our entire county. And so we saw a significant shift from funding that was coming from the city that now the county will be providing. And so what we actually see in this year's budget is less spending than that overall increase from the fire medical new agreement. So I am really happy with where this commission came down. I do just want to say again, and I said this multiple times throughout our budget hearings, our staff are remarkable here at the county. And I am looking forward to the market study that we're doing around salaries for our staff, but we do know that our staff are severely underpaid. And so we can provide a bit of a boost this year through some market raises. And I hope that that helps us retain the really wonderful employees that we have doing the work at the county. But I think that we're going to need to think through this long term of how do we make sure that we're paying competitive salaries so we have the very best services here in Douglas County. Open it up to my fellow commissioners for comments and discussion.
So I want to thank those folks who came and provided comment. I appreciate that. And a number of folks who sent emails, and I even talked to a few folks on the phone about this. And I think it is one of our biggest, it's not one of our, it's our biggest responsibility is setting the budget as a county commission and weighing the county's request for services against the burden that we put upon county property owners and through our sales tax. I think I agree with many of the commenters that it's a difficult time to ask for a tax increase. I was pleased that last year we did not ask for a tax increase. We held steady, but we're also hearing quite a number of people ask for additional services. And so our job is to respond to and find that balance between the services that are requested and the tax burden. I agree with Commissioner Portillo. If you take out the increased cost for ambulance service, it's actually a tax decrease. I know that sort of oversimplifies the budget, but for me, I think that really speaks to the work that the commission did to try to recognize that burden and try to reduce the impact on our Douglas County residents as much as possible.
This Commissioner, excuse me, this Commissioner Reed here, and I would just, agree with my fellow commissioners' comments and add that I believe an investment in our employees, and this compensation study is a particularly important investment that we discussed and we spent quite a bit of time discussing. And so I think that that's an important measure. And then, I also want to note that especially based in some of my conversations and correspondence with folks in recent days about the expansion of social service funding. I am very personally committed, and I believe that my fellow commissioners are, and I know that our staff is also, to investing tax dollars in social services that are countywide. And that we want to lead by example in supporting social service agencies who may have brick and mortar locations based in Lawrence, the largest municipality, but not always and not necessarily, and support them in providing those resources countywide. And so, I've had a few conversations with folks around that topic in particular, and I want to acknowledge that there's always room for improvement, and us at the county, as well as other local governments and social service agencies can and will, I believe, do better at making sure that resource navigation is accessible across the county. And I think that that's a commitment we have to back up with some dollars and some investment into our county budget to make sure that we're doing that and we're providing supportive services. So that's something I'm very proud of. And I want to acknowledge, as I think Commissioner Kelly just touched on, that we received a number of supplemental requests and a number of new requests from community partners. And so it was a lot of discussion to find a balance. And ultimately, I believe that the work of that agreement for fire and medical will simplify and clarify things for us moving forward. And I'm glad that we have figured out how to plan for that in our budget. And I appreciate everybody that has reached out and corresponded with us. I look forward to even more public participation in the budget process with us next summer. Also, it's a really, as Commissioner Kelly said, the most important thing that we do. And as Commissioner Portillo often says, the budget is our values document. And so we believe in investing our taxpayers' dollars into the values that we think Douglas County represents. And I think that this budget reflects that after the tough conversations we had last month.
Happy to make a motion, Commissioner Portillo, if that's okay. I move to adopt the 2022 operating budget, the 2021 through 25 capital improvement plan, county resolution expressing property taxation policy of the Douglas County Commission with respect to financing the annual budget for 2022 and county resolution to levy a property tax rate exceeding the revenue neutral rate.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will move on to item 3.2, conduct a public hearing to receive public comment on and adopt the Consolidated Fire District Number 1, 2022 budget and resolution to exceed the revenue neutral rate. Sarah, do we have a presentation on this?
We do. Cammie Owens is here to walk us through this, just as a quick statement. So the Board of County Commissioners acts as the fire board for Consolidated Fire District Number 1 in rural unincorporated Douglas County. And so therefore, we will hold a public hearing tonight on their budget as well.
Right, so that was my first line, is that commissioners are the fire board for Consolidated Fire District Number 1 of Douglas County. And this is an annual process that is again held in August. We had the first year of the fire board budget last year. This year is very similar. They have a mill levy of 5.5 mills that they've proposed. It is the same mill levy as it was last year. However, it does exceed the revenue neutral rate as defined by state statute as the same amount of dollars collected in the previous year. You will find attached to this document a resolution to exceed the revenue neutral rate. And I'm available for any questions you might have about the budget.
We will open this up to questions from commissioners. Do we have any questions? Okay, we will open this up to public comment. Do we have anyone in the courthouse for public comment?
Ronald Thacker, 582 North 1850 Road. I was a member of the Lecompton Fire Board, the Lecompton Fire District Fire Board. When this merger of the fire departments was proposed, it was laid out clearly by all of the firefighters involved, all the chiefs presenting at the meetings, that they had sufficient budget by combining that they did not need to raise the amount of taxes. So while I applaud the fire department, and out of all the things that the county does, it's probably most important to me. They promised us that they were not going to raise the amount of revenue they collected. They said that the money they were getting now, when they consolidated all the tax levies of all the fire departments, would be sufficient. So I would like a little pushback on them on that, because they should be held accountable for making these statements to boards. I would have voted differently, because one of the biggest stumbling blocks for me was that the county level would decide what the taxes were, not the fire district level. And then further, that the county would determine where the services were placed. And another thing they promised was that the Lecompton Firehouse would be a manned firehouse. My parents live across the back fence from it. I see very little evidence of firefighters present in that firehouse. So if they're going to break the first commitment, they at least need to keep the second part, and that was that there would be firefighters in the Lecompton Firehouse. Thank you.
Do we have any additional public comment in the courthouse? Do we have anyone online for public comment on this item? If so, please use the raise your hand function. Seeing none, we will bring this back to discussion from commissioners. And this is Commissioner Portillo. Cammie, could we just get some clarification? My understanding is that this is a hearing because they're going above revenue neutral, not that they're increasing the rate, just that because of increased valuation, they're bringing in more taxes. So it's above revenue neutral. Can you clarify that for us, please?
That is correct. They are staying with a flat mill levy rate of 5.5, which is what they had last year. The only thing that is exceeding is the legislation's definition of revenue neutral rate.
Thank you.
And the last item, we talked about the work of our county staff and how important this is. This is really some excellent work by Cammie and Sarah and your team to bring all these townships together, and the work to do this is not minimal. And I think, to Mr. Thacker's point, I appreciate that it does actually increase the amount of money, but when we did, I never had the impression that we were going to hold at that dollar level. I always assumed it would be the same mill levy, because there are increases in expenses. There's inflation rates, and we need to make sure we pay the people that work for us and the people that are a part of Consolidated Fire District number 1, we pay them at competitive rates. And if we only hold the actual dollar amount, if we hold the dollar amount steady, we won't be able to do that. So when I voted for Consolidated Fire District 1 and we made those promises, that was very much my expectation. So I'm pleased that we were able to keep this as a flat mill levy.
I have no further comments, but happy to make a motion. I move to adopt the 2022 budget for Consolidated Fire District number 1 and resolution to levy a property tax exceeding the revenue neutral rate.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will move to item 3.3. Zoning and codes, temporary business use permit application from NextEra Energy Resources for placement of a temporary solar meteorological instrument. Do we have a presentation on this item, Sarah?
Yes, commissioners, we're moving staff from zoning and codes into the panel. And there you go, Tanya. We weren't quite sure which Zoom you were under, but Tanya Voigt, our zoning director, is here to make a presentation on this item.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm going to share screen here just real quick. So what I'm bringing forth tonight is a temporary business permit request. It's permit number ZTBU 2021-002, and it's for the placement of a temporary solar meteorological measurement device to collect various meteorological data. It is located on property owned by Kanoki family. It's located at the intersection of N1600 and E2400. NextEra has submitted an application for this temporary business use. It will be for temporary placement of the meteorological instrument intended to measure the site-specific solar irradiance, wind speed, direction, air temperature, relative humidity, precipitation, and atmospheric pressure. This station covers an area of approximately 20 foot by 20 foot. And the data collection is used to determine potential siting for a potential large solar array or solar farm. And this is an example of what that would look like. So the land use in the area is agricultural. The proposed use would remain agricultural with the placement of the measurement device. The zoning in the area, this lot is zoned, it's on 80 acres, it's zoned AG1. There's no proposed change to the existing zoning district, and it is located outside of the urban growth area. There are some site characteristics that are unique to the property. The western portion of the property does include prime soils, and the location of the temporary meteorological station is located in a prime soil area. You can see the dot down there. The eastern portion of the property contains farmland of statewide importance, which is the yellow or orangish area. And the proposed Met Tower does have some floodplain in the northeast corner. And there's some also wetland, which is down in the southwest corner and the northeast corner. The proposed area obviously is not affected by the floodplain or the wetlands. So adverse impacts to the natural environment, other than it's located in prime soils, it is temporary in nature and can easily be reclaimed back to its original agricultural condition once it's removed. The property zoning was established in 1966, and the property has been used for agricultural purposes since then. We could not identify any detrimental effects to nearby properties. And the gain to the public would be just to gain more information on long-term solar suitability in Douglas County. Public services, there are no services required for this use. They don't need any utilities. The unit is fully autonomous and operates power from solar panels and batteries. And then they will need to get an entrance permit from Palmyra Township. Equipment is adequacy of the continued maintenance. The equipment is temporary for data collection purposes. Maintenance is not generally anticipated unless they need to go in 1 or 2 days a week to collect the data, but almost all that is done remotely. If they needed to service the unit, obviously they would need to go in and out for that. The applicant has requested approval for a 3-year period to collect that data. So it'd be from August from this year, 2021 to August 2024, with the option to extend if they needed to continue to collect additional data. We can always bring that back to you at that time, or you can administratively recommend that our office can administratively approve an extension as well. The things that we look at are the duration of the use, the traffic impacts, if there's any public health issues or anything else that staff or the board feels needs to be addressed. So we did ask some additional questions. That's mostly because this type of unit doesn't meet kind of some of our basic temporary business uses like asphalt plants. This is something very different in nature. So we did want documentation of some additional questions. In 2017, we actually approved a SODAR unit to collect wind data. And that was also with NextEra at that time. And we were able to visit out in northeastern Kansas. We were able to go out and visit a SODAR unit. And there was quite a bit of chirping coming from that unit. And it would beep like every 6 or 7 seconds when we were out there. And so what we were curious is if this type of unit, which is a solar unit, if it had any noises associated with it. And the answer was that the solar met station does not have any noise or flare, glare. That's what that's supposed to say, or vibrations. And another question we asked is there a solar meteorological measurement device that we can visit? Because we were able to do that with the SODAR unit. So sometimes it's nice to just see, but they don't have any located in Kansas, but they submitted that photo, which was helpful. We just wanted confirmation that there was no utility or sanitation needed at the site, and there was none. And then we did ask for an updated site plan showing the exact entrance location where the driveway to the unit would be, and then the distances from the property lines. We've not received that quite yet. I don't believe that that's a big problem. We can always make that a requirement prior to the issuance of a permit. We did ask if there was any exterior lighting that could affect neighbors. There's none anticipated. What type of fence or how tall the fence would be, and it'd be 6 foot. The picture showed a chain link fence. And then one of the requirements of a temporary business use permit is that they need to provide general liability insurance. And they are working to secure that. So we don't actually have a copy of that in hand yet. We are curious if there were any reception interference with like microwave towers or FAA considerations. There were none. And we were curious if the site would be posted with emergency contact information. And they said they'd be happy to laminate a card and put their vendor information on there. So we did send notification out to all property owners within a half mile of the site. That was sent out on July 28th of 2021. And to this date, we've not received any communication from anyone. So the staff recommendation would be to approve the temporary business use request with the following conditions. Prior to the issuance of the temporary business use, we'd like them to meet with Palmyra Township Fire. I spoke with the fire chief with Palmyra Township, and he really, in case of a grass fire, wanted to be able to talk with them about fire suppression and any defensible space that they'd like around the unit. And so they'd just like a little bit of a fire safety plan. I think they can just talk to each other, get that worked out, and we just need verification from the fire chief that they're meeting any standards that the fire chief would like. We would also like an approval of an updated site plan prior to installation and the proof of liability insurance prior to installation. And I believe John Peterson, Billy Wilkins, and Alan Anderson with NextEra are all in the room, I believe. And they can also answer any questions you might have.
If you'd like to say anything before we get to questions, you're welcome to come forward.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. John Peterson with Post-Nolly PC, business address 900 West 48th Place in Kansas City, Missouri. Having the pleasure of appearing this afternoon on behalf of NextEra Energy Resources. Alan Anderson, my partner and head of our energy group, is here, and Billy Wilkins, who is with NextEra and is the project director, I think is with us remote. He was having a little trouble dialing in, but I think he may be with us remote. Never ask a lawyer if he wants to talk, because you're always going to get a yes. But in this case, with the complete evaluation by staff, both their written staff report, oral staff report, I think they've laid out all the facts accurately. We have read it, of course. We have read the 3 conditions. If we're fortunate to receive your approval, we understand those conditions and we'll adhere to them. So with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
I will open it up for questions from commissioners.
This is Commissioner Reed. Tanya, thanks for that overview. You sort of started to answer my question. I just wondered if you could expand, since this is my first time as a commissioner seeing a temporary business unit, a permit like this in front of us. What are some other examples of that? And aside from, you mentioned one that was specific to wind in the past, but it sounds like this is the first solar version that's been requested in Douglas County, correct?
That's correct. Others that we have, that I've processed since I've been at Douglas County would be the request for a temporary asphalt plant, and that would be just temporary laying down some type of contractor yard. Sometimes it could be related to natural gas. It could be a pipe yard, just something where a construction company typically needs to come into the site, have an area where they can house certain things, and then they move out when the project is done. A lot of those are so temporary in nature, they're usually less than a year. So these are a little bit longer requests, but given the nature of needing to collect data, I can understand that they need a little bit longer time. Another one that we processed, I think it was last year, was a permission to burn commercially on a site. So that would allow contractors or landscape people to take brush from a site, take it to another site on private property, and have the ability, along with KDHE and permitting through KDHE, have the ability to be able to burn brush, it's called open brush burning, where you can pile up all of the brush and then you would have permission to be able to burn that on the site. Those are the only ones that I've processed so far at Douglas County.
That was super helpful list. Thank you for the context. My other question is for you, and was your last name Mr. Peterson?
Yes, ma'am.
Is that right? Thank you. We've been having a lot of conversation. You were just at our local joint planning commission meeting about some regulations around commercial solar. And so I know you've been in a lot of contact with our staff, and appreciate that communication and that open line of info sharing and collaboration. Can you help me understand? So when I read this staff report that's before us, it sounds to me like the real goal is to collect and examine data to know if it's a suitable site. Is that accurate?
Well, because it might raise the question if you're already talking to staff. And by the way, we appreciate the collaborative effort to get together to work through regulations, so we know the context to hopefully bring forth an application for full consideration by the commission. But you'd say, well, why are you just testing now?
Yeah, I just wonder if you've collected it, maybe you've collected it just nearby in Johnson County already, and that's given you the data you need to move forward as you already have been.
Commissioner, the way the process works is there's a lot of what you call desk analytic work going on. So there's a lot of information available about the atmospheric conditions in Kansas and Douglas County in the specific area. So you start drawing conclusions from that. We call it, working sort of desktop work, taking all that information together. And you hit that critical point where you realize that there is an abundant amount of sun that could be harvested to turn into renewable energy. And they're very confident in those numbers, so confident that they have started to the other process of someday hoping to be entitled to bring a solar project to the state. What this does is start building on that first set of analytical work, starting to confirm. Also, it starts drilling down in a little more detail, because it really, the reason it's there 3 years, not being presumptuous on the time frame to bring something forward, but it would be there during site preparation through actual design of the solar facility itself. So you're picking up and making refinements in the design as you actually move through to the application and through the final approval. So it's important for confirmation. It's important for more in-depth data as you get into more intricate design, and then confirmation at the end of the process.
Thank you.
If we don't have additional questions from commissioners, we will open this up for public comment. Do we have anyone here in the courthouse for public comment on this item? Do we have anyone joining us online for public comment on this item? Seeing no one raising their hand virtually, we will bring this back to commissioners for discussion. I will open it up for discussion. I will just say, as a social scientist, I always love the collection of data, so I'm very pro data collection, and this does move towards our goals of sustainability and thinking more about how we can address climate change in our community.
Commissioner Reed, yeah, I would agree. I think that the data is important to have. In some ways, I feel eager for some of that data already as the conversation is evolving in our community. But I'm glad to see this come forward. And Tanya, I appreciate your work on this and your staff's work. And I know you've been digging in deep in all things solar in recent months. So this feels like an important tangible step in that work.
I don't have any further comments. I'm glad to make a motion. I move to approve a temporary business use permit for placement of a temporary solar meteorological instrument with the recommended conditions.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will move on to item 3.4, introduction of Bruce Chanley, Executive Director of the Kansas Association of Counties.
Thank you, commissioners. Representatives from the Kansas Association of Counties asked to just briefly spend a little bit of time introducing themselves to the commission. And so we appreciate the role the Kansas Association of Counties plays for counties in Kansas, and just to invite you to make any comments you'd like to make.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Administrator Sarah. Appreciate the opportunity to visit, and good evening, commissioners. As introduced, my name is Bruce Cladney, the Executive Director for the Kansas Association of Counties. Joining me in the audience is Betty Oliva, who is our office manager, and we're doing some finance work with her. And then we also have Dan Partridge, as you recognize. He sits on our advisory board, our governing board, representing the Kansas Association of Local Health Departments. So we've been traveling around the state, visiting with the commissioners and just kind of giving an update and just a brief introduction to the Kansas Association of Counties, and just answering questions and kind of having a dialogue real quick about the association, of which Douglas County is a member, and we certainly do appreciate that. And we look forward to working with you, continued working with you in the future. A couple of things I wanted to talk about real quick, that we do have the Kansas Association of Counties, the KAC conference is coming up in October, the 18th through the 20th, and all of you folks are welcome to attend. There's going to be in Overland Park, Kansas this year, and we're looking forward to a good event. So we really do welcome you to come across the border and come on up and visit us on the 18th through the 20th. And then also, we will be voting on the legislative policy that day. And so we are in the process of putting together the legislative policy right now. The legislative policy is the platform that KAC uses to represent you all at the state house when we get into the legislative session next year. And so we certainly do welcome your input and your feedback, and then you will be voting on that policy and helping us move forward with those efforts as we get into the legislative session next year. A couple of things that are going to be included in that legislative policy that are very important, that I think you're going to start finding more important here in Douglas County, is a little issue called dark store theory. If you're not familiar with dark store theory, we are going to be doing some educational programming on that, because that is going to probably become an issue across the state of Kansas, particularly in our more urban areas. And basically it contributes to the higher taxes that citizens come here to complain to you about, because as businesses and organizations are taken off the tax rolls, or their tax responsibilities are lessened, those left holding the bag have to pay a little bit more, and therefore they come here complaining that they're paying more, and they truly are, because there are more people paying less. And so dark store theory is definitely going to become more common and more popular in these more urban areas. And so we're going to try to work with our members to kind of get ahead of it, and maybe see what we can do to prevent it from becoming an issue here in the state of Kansas. Also, another issue that you're going to see that we're going to be working on a little bit more consistently on is something called constitutional home rule. Right now, counties enjoy legislative home rule that allows you to do what you're doing tonight, basically conduct business on behalf of the citizens in the community. However, legislative home rule is not protected. Therefore, a vote of the legislature could minimize the home rule. And that happens 39 times. If you look in state statute, there's been 39 limitations put on counties where they can't opt out of, or they can't do something because the Kansas legislature says that's not allowed. Constitutional home rule gives you folks a little bit more authority to basically say, this is what we want for our community, and that allows you to opt out of things without the legislature preventing it from happening. And so we would love to see counties get constitutional home rule, because as the population shifts, if you saw the new demographics came out, and 80 counties across the state of Kansas have lost population, and only a few counties have gained population. You're going to see that some of the more rural counties are going to become less impactful, and some of the larger counties are going to have more say in things. Constitutional home rule is going to be good for all counties across the state of Kansas. And so you're going to see KAC working on that in the next year or so. Also, if you've been reading the news, that Senate Bill 40, the KEMA, the Emergency Management Bill, is definitely in the news, and we really are in the kind of in a holding pattern right now, and what it means to affect you folks at the county level. And so we're working with with our members and the county legal teams to kind of figure out where you guys need to go and what you need to do to stay abreast of the KEMA bill as it works its way through the now Supreme Court process. And so we'll keep you folks up to date as we find out information as well. And then it was great. I'm glad we came to this evening and saw Senate Bill 13 enacted. Unfortunately, it is quite a process. It was great to watch you work your way through it, take the public comment, vote on the resolution to exceed the revenue neutral rate, which is what we're telling all of our recommending all of our counties do. And I don't think you had to send out the announcement this year, but moving forward, you are going to have to send out an announcement, and that is going to cost folks. Once again, people, taxpayers that come here to complain about cost of business going up, it is because of Senate Bill 13 that cost of business is going to go up, because you're going to have to send out announcements. And so those are the types of things that we like to work with you all to raise an awareness with our constituents, that these are the reasons why prices are going up, because you're having these mandates come down from the state level. On a good note, we're still working on the opioid settlement. So we're in the process of putting together an MOU with the League of Kansas Municipalities, and we're going to be sending that up to the Attorney General's office, so that when the opioid settlement money starts to flow, that counties will get their fair share, and you will be able to use that to invest in your opioid pandemic or issues that you're dealing with, opioid addictions. And so there'll be money there for you to do educational programs and some other remediation type activities, complements of the opioid settlement. So that is in the works. Hopefully we'll see something move on that by the end of the year. And then also, I know you guys are knee deep in the ARPA funds and the American Rescue Plan funds. And so we're watching all the chatter on the internet about that. And so we're kind of working with the Spark office. I know the Spark office has stayed standing up and has been working with all of our county members to make sure that those funds get spent properly. I'm proud to say we only have 3 counties in the state of Kansas that have not gotten their funding yet, which is a great, if you think about it, 102 out of 105 counties have already gotten their money, or at least committed to getting their money. So we're working with those other 3 counties. Obviously, Douglas County has gotten theirs, and so congratulations on that. And then finally, last but not least, I'd be remiss if I didn't say thank you for being a member of NACO. The reason your membership in NACO has definitely helped all counties across the state of Kansas. And in fact, it is because of NACO, and we can actually pinpoint this, those ARPA funds are coming to Douglas County because of the hard work of the National Association of Counties in Washington, D.C. They worked tirelessly behind the scenes from the very beginning of the pandemic to make sure that counties were taken care of, and hopefully got some funds, and we finally did in the American Rescue Plan. So with that, I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. And I thank you for the opportunity to visit with you all tonight.
Well, thank you so much. First of all, nice to meet you. We really appreciate you taking the time to come visit with us this evening. I also just want to say thank you for those 1-minute legislative update videos during the session. Love
Yes.
those. They're great.
Okay.
Your legislative director does a wonderful job. I am wondering a bit about the legislative agenda for next year. I didn't hear you mention Medicaid expansion, but our failure to expand Medicaid severely hurts local budgets. We know that in our county, Our drug court costs are going up because we don't have Medicaid expansion, which would cover the cost of a lot of the treatment that we provide that the county is footing the bill for, and that's hurting rural communities all over the state. Is that something that KAC has considered?
Yes, so we have definitely considered, and we advocate on behalf of counties for all funding sources. So all things money that come into the counties, we definitely support. Medicaid expansion is one of those issues that we can definitely support, and we do. Every chance we get, we try to answer questions and promote the benefits of those funds coming into our counties, because as you well know, funding is getting cut in other areas. And so any way we can increase funding to our counties, which helps relieve the property tax pressures on local taxpaying citizens, is definitely a benefit. And so we are definitely on that side.
Do we have additional questions?
Just first of all, I want to give a personal thank you to your group's work last March as we encountered the pandemic. We relied heavily on the Kansas Association of Counties. It seemed like almost on a daily basis at that time. And as being on the commission at that time, it was a scary time. And we didn't know what we were facing, and you all were really responsive, and I really appreciated that. So I just wanted to say thank you. Last week, some of us in Douglas County, Lieutenant Governor Tolan, Secretary of Commerce, was here, and he shared with us that the Spark Committee is stuck in, I think what he said accurately was stuck in the mud. And I think I'd be interested to hear if Kansas Association of Counties as a nonpartisan group is doing anything to move that process forward. We have a lot of projects that are looking forward to that work from the Spark Committee. Do you have any updates for us on that at all?
So first off, let me say thank you for the compliments and the accolades. We really do appreciate that. When the COVID virus hit, we certainly did not know what our role was going to be at the Kansas Association of Counties, and we had to patiently wait to see what happened. But it very quickly became evident that there needed to be some sort of mechanism to get information out to our counties, because obviously, as you well know, the governor's office had not set up the Spark office yet. And so basically there was a vacuum. And so we were able to convene you all using Zoom, and it was great to watch. We had 100, 150, 200, 210 people joining us on a regular basis. And so I'm glad that you were a beneficiary of those services. When it comes to the actual Spark office today, that's a little bit different animal now, because the money that you all are dealing with isn't coming from the state like the CARES Act funding did. So we had a very close relationship with the Spark office because of that fact that all of the money that you were spending for CARES Act was coming from the state, and the state was responsible for. Now with the ARPA funds, that is coming directly into your coffers from the Treasury, and you're responsible for, managing that money and reporting it to the Treasury and so on and so forth. So we have kind of, I don't want to say lost contact with Spark, but Spark is really not as influential on the county level as what we have been focusing on. Now, granted, there are some state level programs, and you're right, there's still some money that's going to trickle down to counties. But as far as us being able to move the needle, I don't think that's going to be something that we can do, only because that's not our, it's not, I don't want to say that's not our dog in that fight type of thing. Our dog is here in the local county offices and the ARPA funds that you're getting directly from the Treasury. But we certainly will look into it. We talk to the Spark office on a regular basis, but anything that we can do, we certainly would try to, but I can't guarantee that we're going to get them off the fence, because as you well know, this pandemic has really taken on a beast of its own. So very much so.
I don't have any questions, but I really appreciate you taking time to go visit all of the counties and introduce yourself and give us an update about what you all are working on. And I agree with Commissioner Portillo that those little short videos are they're very well done. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And I'll pass that along to Jay. We'll continue to build those out. And then I think another service that Jay and I have spoken about is to organize our county members that deal as kind of like the liaison at the county level with the legislature. Not every county has one, but if Douglas County has a liaison, somebody that kind of keeps an eye on the legislature and what's going on and advocates on behalf of the local folks here and reports back to you all about what's happening in Topeka, we're going to convene everybody on a regular basis. Once a week, we're just going to have an open Zoom, like an hour-long lunch type of thing or whatever, and just kind of talk about what's going on, get feedback, provide, information, get feedback, that type of thing. So I think you're going to see us growing that initiative, because quite frankly, as we are discovering, Jay and I really can't, make a huge impact. It's going to have to come from the county level. You folks have to raise your voices and make some differences at the state level. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, got to get the message there.
Well, thank you so much. Since this is on our regular agenda, do we open this up for public comment? Do we have any public who would like to say anything?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Douglas County Commission, good evening. I'm State Senator Tom Holland. I'm also a Douglas County resident. I was here to speak on another issue, but I just wanted to, since you did Casey stand up, I just want to basically add kind of my 2 cents as a legislator in the Kansas Senate. I do look at Kansas Association of Counties as an advocate of information, a great source of information to help me make decisions. As the ranking minority member of Senate Tax Committee, I wanted to speak just very briefly about 2 issues. Number one, what the gentleman talks about, the dark store theory. Make no mistake, the Kansas Chamber of Commerce is advocating on behalf of its dark store clients, and these are obviously large nationwide retailers and other types of similar properties. They did some things this past year in the Kansas legislature I view as very problematic. I think it's going to impact basically how our Board of Tax Appeals ultimately rules in some of these cases. I would just ask that you really work with other counties. I have a fear, just as a property taxpayer myself, we talk about dark store theory. We basically talk about squeezing a balloon, where as those tax revenues dwindle, okay, from certain types of commercial property classes, obviously that burden gets shifted to your homestead property tax owners, okay? And so don't lose sight on that one, because I'm very fearful what that's going to do for all but the residential homeowners. The other thing very quick would be is that Senate Bill 13. I do want to bring that out. I actually supported that legislation. Why I did is because when the property tax lid was first put it back in 2014, I saw this very problematic to our local units of government. Yes, there are some, you could use onerous reporting requirements, but at least by getting Senate Bill 13, in my mind, actually frees your hands to make unfettered budgeting decisions. So I'll just stand out with that. But once again, appreciate Casey as a partner and appreciate working you guys, and just let's have open lines of communications. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Holland. I see no hands raised online, so we will move on to item 3.5, Public Works. Consider a proposal to eliminate special assessments for road maintenance in the Hesper Charter Road Improvement District. Looks like we have a presentation for this item.
Thank you, Commissioners. Chad Voigt, Douglas County Public Works. This is in regards to Hesper Road Improvement District, which is located in Eudora Township, a couple miles south of the city of Eudora. In 2006, those residents came to the commission and petitioned to have their roads improved. They were gravel roads at the time, maintained by the township. And that work was done, and those residents paid over a 10-year period for the initial improvement. At the same time, they entered into a maintenance agreement that meant that they paid every single year until now and ongoing for continued maintenance. Initially, it was $20,000 total for the cost of the maintenance that year, and that's gone up over time. It's now $50,000 per year spread over the township and 39 landowners. What we're proposing at this time is that we eliminate that expense and that assessment for those landowners. And the consensus among staff and different departments with the county is that there's not really a good return on that collection. It takes a lot to collect it in the first place. The county engineer is involved, has been involved for all those years in determining the rate. the assessor's department, the clerk, the commission, and those dollar amounts aren't really a benefit in the end. More importantly, the equity of it isn't really there. When we look across the county at low volume roads, they're the only location that pays for maintenance. And so one way to view is that they've sort of paid their dues or done their time, and now we're going to treat them similar to other subdivisions. So I didn't want to just, make that broad statement and ask for your approval or opinion. So I dove deep and gave you a study that looks at all of our low volume roads, and there's quite a bit of data there. That helped me understand the issue quite a bit. I knew that we maintained some low volume roads. I wasn't sure, in all cases how those came to be. So now I'm sort of more educated on those issues, and that's good. And that convinced me even more that this is the right thing to do. So with that, I'll open it to questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from commissioners?
If I could add something, I really appreciate Chad bringing this forward. I think it's time for us to consider this. I do think for those of us that have been around the courthouse for a long time, Hesper is a cautionary tale about what to consider when we put special districts into place. And I think if we were to do it all over again, we would do some things differently. But I also think it's important to note that, this is a subdivision with a paved road and expectations of landowners on those for those types of roads and improvements. And it's part of the reason why we have so many conversations about growth and impact in the community and how we should look at those issues. So I thank Chad for his hard work on this, and just also I'm available if the commissioners have any questions.
Thank you. Seeing no questions from commissioners, we will open this up to public comment. Do we have any public comment here today?
Commissioners, my name's Otis D. Hall. I live at 1123 East 2300 Road, Eudora, Kansas. This road runs right in front of my house. There are several questions that I have that may need to be addressed to Chad, but I wanted to get them on the record. The letter that we received from Chad indicates that they will continue the chip and seal of that road. The majority of that road has been replaced with asphalt that we've paid for. And we want to make sure that I want to make sure that it continues to be asphalt. When they did the ditch work last year, right past my house, they added almost 6 inches of asphalt right along my ditch. I know because I mow that ditch, and now my tractor is at a real bad angle. So I want to make sure that, like I said, it gets continued to be asphalt and doesn't go back to chip and seal. Another question that I have is, would this action dissolve the Hesper Charter Road Improvement District? Would it be gone? Because we've had representatives before the commission since its inception. I've served, 2 gentlemen that I'm with have served. The current representative is Keith Turnbaugh, and he couldn't make it tonight. So just wondering whether it will be dissolved and we would no longer have to attend these meetings. The other concern that I have is that it says that the maintenance will be turned over to the Eudora Township. And I'm wondering whether the Eudora Township has the ability to maintain asphalt roads. I mean, I know right now there's some patching that needs to be done that hasn't been done. Snow and ice removal is another thing. How will that be handled and by who? I mean, in the past, we were the first ones to get cleaned off. They were out there at 4 o'clock in the morning cleaning our roads. I want to make sure that stays in place. So that's all I have. Do you have any questions for me? Okay, thank you.
Any additional public comment? Okay, Chad, I will invite you back up if you want to answer any of those questions.
Yes, I'd be happy to. I'll grab the letter in a minute, but I believe what we said was we would continue to maintain it as we have in the past. There'd be no change in the level of maintenance. We'll do snow duty. And the chip seal surface, it was chip sealed some, it was asphalt some. We'll continue the same practices. So it may be that the next time around it would be a chip seal. And then the next time after that, it might be milled and overlaid with asphalt. It really comes down to the pavement management program for those segments. But it wouldn't strictly be chip seal. So I think there was a question about whether this dissolves the district, and it would not. What we're proposing is that if you're supportive of this, that we would come back with a revised maintenance agreement. It's an agreement that basically says the county's going to do everything, and the other parties are released. So that would leave the district intact if there was a future capital improvement of some kind. We really don't need to dissolve it for any reason. The board, in this case, again, like the fire district, you're the district board for Hesper, so it'll still exist. Were there other questions?
I believe those were all of the questions that the gentleman asked.
Okay. And and as far as going back to Eudora, that statement was in the future, when Eudora can maintain pavement, then that's when they would get it. And that's similar with statements that have been made for quite a while in the county about us maintaining roads.
Okay, I will bring this back to commissioners for discussion.
I just thank you, Chad, for the overview this evening and for answering Mr. Hall's questions. And I just want to appreciate the attachment that you included in with the summary, and I think that was is helpful context for me personally. And I thought it was a pretty good overview of the sort of convoluted taxing district and systems that we have in Kansas. And so I just appreciate that overview and the good faith effort of continuing to take care of those roads and move on as is, and sort of just uncomplicated, it sounds like. So I appreciate that.
I just want to thank you, Chad, for bringing this forward, and you used the word equity. And I think that's something we've talked in this chamber a lot, and maybe not specifically thinking about that, but I want to encourage Sarah to continue to ask staff to bring things forward when they see that there is an inequitable situation developing. Sometimes we phrase that around race, but there's lots of other ways that we can look at equity. And I think I speak for the commission when I think we're interested in more equitable practices and policies from our county government. So thank you for bringing that forward and thinking about that.
As a point of process, Sarah, do we need to give any formal direction? It doesn't look like there's a motion before us.
Yeah, we do have a motion.
Chad, do you want a motion?
I think it would be good to have a motion, since they're the board of the district,
Yeah.
to move to direct us to revise the agreement.
It looks like we do have a motion here, so I would move to consider directing the Public Works Department to provide a draft road maintenance agreement eliminating special assessments for road maintenance in the Hesper Charter Road Improvement District.
I would go ahead and second with one amendment that we not consider, but we actually direct them to develop that, if that's acceptable.
Let's go ahead and vote on that with the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you, Chad. We will move on to item 3.6. So I guess we might as well stay right up there. Public Works, consider options to improve safety at the North 1000 East 1600 intersection and direct Public Works Department to proceed with plans for a preferred alternative.
That's right. We've got a major road project underway. We're in design process right now. This would be on N1000 road between E1500 and E1600. It would be an extension of the work that was completed last year on the south extension of Haskell. It's also part of the overall route between Baldwin City and Lawrence on Route 1055. It's a multi-year phased approach to putting shoulders on those roads. This project was introduced in the CIP in 2014, so it's definitely been around a while in one form or another. At this point, the scope for next year is to do that mile plus go a mile south at E1600 Road to the bridge, or 0.6 miles south. So that project's coming together well, and it's going to be a really dramatic improvement if you've driven that stretch of road. One of the pieces of that, though, is that at the intersection there at E1600, we've known for years that that's a problem with accidents. There's a sort of a mix of factors that make driver perception a problem, change in land use right at that point. There's essentially 3 legs that are heavily traveled, 1 leg is not. It's a 2-way stop. We've got some sight distance issues. And so we've known for quite a while that intersection improvements are warranted. And the initial assumption was that a right turn lane might function as a good solution. But in more recent years, we've also wondered that a roundabout might be a good solution. And so what we've done is we hired WSP engineers to do a study, and we've got Terry Coder and David Church with us tonight, and they're going to give you a presentation on their findings. And then after that, so I want to make it clear that there's no public involvement yet in this process. So I've talked to the 4 landowners at each corner, just so that they weren't finding out about it later tomorrow. And I wanted to get some initial feedback. If we were to proceed with this, we would do some further design development, and then we would go to a public meeting phase. So we're really just kind of looking for feedback and guidance at this point. So with that, I think it'd be a good time to bring up David Church and Terry Coder. These guys are seasoned transportation engineers. They've been around Kansas for a long time, and I've worked with both of them quite a while. And they actually designed the first rural roundabout in Kansas. So we've got good references here. So with that.
Thank you, Chad, and thank you, commissioners. I've got a presentation. Let me go ahead and pull that up. Let's see. You know how I get it on that screen?
So you need to share your screen.
Okay.
Is it on the screen there?
Yes.
It should share it into the room.
Okay. We'll do share screen.
Share screen.
Okay.
Oh, that actually, Robin, yeah, that's I think it has to be on that one.
Gotcha.
Because that's the projector. Oh, you got it. Great. There we go.
There we
Awesome.
go. Thank you.
Cool. Just in time for me to not know what I'm talking about. Right.
My name's David Church. I'm a senior traffic engineer for WSP, and our business address is 300 Wyandotte, Kansas City, Missouri, 64105. And we appreciate the opportunity to visit with you this evening about the recently conducted traffic study at North 1000 Road and East 1600 Road in Douglas County. So as Chad mentioned, there's an existing improvement project that we'll discuss. We'll talk about data collection and our safety analysis, comparing different intersection alternatives, our study recommendations, and then see if there's any questions. Our project team consisted of myself, Terry Coder, a senior road designer, as well as a traffic engineer and a traffic intern from KU that was working for us, all under the direction and support of Mr. Voigt. So the existing improvement project, as Chad described, is project number 2016-17. It's Route 458/105 Road in drainage improvements. And as he discussed, the specific improvements that include this intersection. And here's just a copy of the title sheet of the project plan, so you can see the portion on North 1000 Road and then the portion on East 1600 Road. And where it turns is the intersection in question. This is what it looks like from the air. And you can see the adjacent property owners to the intersection. A little bit about the study background. There is a history of crashes at the intersection. And so Douglas County hired WSP to do a traffic study in order to evaluate different intersection types and recommend the most appropriate type. So we looked at continuing with the two-way stop with no changes, a two-way stop with an eastbound right turn lane, converting it to an all-way stop, and then also looked at a single lane roundabout. We were at the intersection in February of this year to count traffic during the AM peak and the PM peak. And we realized that this is during the pandemic. And so we compared those counts to counts from the most recent years. And we actually took those counts and multiplied them by 3. So we tripled them so that they were more in line with what you would normally expect. And if you look at the counts, you can see that the primary movement is eastbound to southbound and northbound to westbound, right along the southwest corner of the intersection. And the north leg is the least driven leg of the 4. We looked at existing permanent signing at the intersection. The posted speed limit on North 1000 Road is 55 miles per hour. On the north side, it's at 35 miles per hour. And I believe on the south side, it's 55 miles per hour as well. We did look at 5 years of crashes from 2015 to 2019, which was the latest 5 years that were available. There were 8 crashes total, 4 of which resulted in injury. And so whenever you have a 50% injury of your overall crashes, that's something that needs more investigation. And most of those injury crashes are side impact crashes or left turn crashes where vehicles are striking each other at right angles, which is the most severe. So we developed what's called a collision diagram. And as shown on the screen, we can see a definite pattern of vehicles northbound trying to turn left, being struck by eastbound through vehicles. And 3 of those crashes resulted in injuries. Thankfully, the 4th one was just property damage only. But the reason why we do these collision diagrams is you can visually see what the patterns are of crashes at the intersection. When we look at the crash rate at the intersection, the blue line on the left has about 15 crashes per 10 million entering vehicles. And if you compare that to the state average for rural intersections, which is around 6 crashes per 10 million entering vehicles, the critical intersection rate is around 14. So what this tells us is that the rate of crashes at this intersection is statistically significant above the average rate. We then looked at what's called the Highway Safety Manual. It's a federal highway document that will tell you what you can expect with regard to crash improvements with different type of infrastructure intersection types. So for instance, for a single lane roundabout, through the Highway Safety Manual, you would expect to reduce crashes by about 2/3. With an all-way stop, it would reduce crashes by approximately 1/2. And a two-way stop with an eastbound right turn lane would reduce crashes by around 14%. And then we take that reduction, we can actually come up with an annual benefit for each. And then over a 20-year period of the life of the project, a benefit over the life of the project. So for a single lane roundabout, that's 2.7 million. An all-way stop is 1.5 million. And adding the eastbound right turn lane with a two-way stop is 800,000. So again, we looked at those different intersection types. And we also grew traffic 20 years into the future using a growth rate that was provided by the MPO for Lawrence and Douglas County, such that we are looking at traffic into the future during the life of the project. So when we looked at the future two-way stop control, we saw what we would expect, which is some drop in level of service or traffic operations for the northbound stop with an average delay per vehicle during the AM and PM of around 6 seconds per vehicle. Then when we add the right turn lane, the level of service improves and the overall delay reduces, which is what we would expect. When we look at an all-way stop, which is the most, it's very safe, but it's about the most inefficient type of intersection that you can have, we saw a delay essentially double from what a two-way stop you would have. And then when we looked at the single lane roundabout, the delay was the least of all the other options, as well as the level of service was the most favorable. And when we compare these alternatives, since we know the cost of constructing each one of these intersection types, and we know the safety benefit over 20 years, we can develop a benefit to cost ratio for each. So for a two-way stop with an eastbound right turn lane, the benefit to cost is 1.33. For an all-way stop, since you're kind of replacing what's there, but not really building new infrastructure, the benefit to cost is 3.0. And for a single lane roundabout, it's 1.5. And if you have a benefit to cost greater than 1, that means your investment is a good one. It's going to have more improvements than which is good for safety and everything. So our study recommendations based on the results of the study was to construct a single lane roundabout as our preferred alternative at the intersection. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Terry Coder to talk about, we developed a concept of the single lane roundabout, and he's just going to talk through the details of that concept.
Thank you, commissioners, for the opportunity to do this study and to present the information to you. I'll try to use the mouse here as a pointer if I can. First, a little bit on roundabout terminology. When I use the term splitter island, I'm actually talking about the median islands. And for some reason, when the roundabout started developing, they had to have a special name for a median, so we call it a splitter island. There's another value, another thing we talk about, and that is the inscribed circle diameter. And that is the distance from across the circular part of the roundabout. On this roundabout, that is we've set that at 160 feet, which is typical for most rural roundabouts. There's also, if you see this red circle on the inside of the roundabout, we call that the truck apron. And that's used by large trucks traveling through the intersection. Their back wheels will track onto that surface and keep them from running over curbs or into the landscaping area or something else. The green area here is called the central island. And the yellow is just more more of the central island. I've got the green. We've been talking about buffalo grass as being an easily maintained material to use in the inside of the roundabout. And then this would just be some higher vegetation outside of the lines of the traffic negotiating the lines of sight of the traffic negotiating the intersection. On the roundabout, we call them high approach speed roundabouts because they're the speed on the approaching roadways are higher than 45 miles per hour. And that's atypical of roundabouts that are in an urban area. And one of the things we do is we try on a rural situation where you got vehicles traveling at a higher rate approaching them, is we try to get them slowed down. We try to get them slowed down and get the driver's attention so that they know they're going into a different type of roadway environment. So we introduce that splitter island and start tapering out for the splitter island at a distance that is the comfortable stopping distance for that design speed ahead of the intersection. So at this intersection, the actual tapers going into the roundabout would begin 505 feet in advance of the circulating roadway. And that's the distance it takes for a car to slow down and stop at the yield line. So on the north leg where there's a 35 mile per hour speed, that's only a 200-foot length that needs to be addressed on the approaching because you're only going 35 mile an hour. So that's that. The circulating roadway here has a width of 18 feet, and that's consistent with most single lane roundabouts. Other features are we've got lighting around the roundabout shown. It's real important to have roundabouts illuminated, at least at the intersection area, because your vehicle's headlights don't show where you need to go. They don't shine where the car where you want to go. So when you turn the car, then you have lighting. So the lighting around the circle of the roundabout's important. We've also shown lighting in advance of the intersection, which would be more consistent of a state highway application and wouldn't necessarily be needed on this. So that's in general, the general layout of the roundabout. And I'll move on to the next slide. This is another roundabout that's very similar to this one. This is one I designed out in Reno County, just north of Hutchinson. And it's at 56th and Plum. It's very similar area, and it's been there, so I think 15 years. We've got high approach speed roadways coming into the roundabout. We slid the roundabout actually to the west here on this site because of the proximity to this home, and also due to some underground utilities and some drainage concerns. But there's one that's very similar that was constructed 15 years ago and has been working great. Here's a screenshot of that same intersection. The splitter island here is paved with, that's a pattern stamped brick concrete pavement. And then you can see the circulating roadway and the truck apron. This is a picture of a high approach speed rural roundabout at on US 75 at K268. The K68 and Old Casey Road roundabout, David mentioned that. That's the first, or Chad mentioned that. That's the first roundabout on the Kansas highway system, and David and I did that project. There's several other here, but the roundabouts in rural locations have grown in popularity, and they have saved a lot of lives. This is a typical section of the roundabout we looked at. This is really kind of just a planning drawing that we used for cost estimating. But we're just showing a concrete pavement on an aggregate and compacted earth subgrade. We generally make roundabouts concrete because asphalt pavement is a wonderful material, but it ruts, particularly in places where there's high turning volumes and also in places where you're stopping. So there's a great tendency to build concrete intersections with asphalt links. So we would probably begin the concrete on the project at the beginning of the splitter islands or 500 feet in advance of the road. This is the truck apron of the roundabout, and it's 14 feet wide, I believe. And it's separated from the circulating roadway by that small curb that I'm sure you all seen. And that curb is to prevent passenger vehicles and other trucks from driving straight across it, but to allow the back wheels of large vehicles to ride up on it. Our design vehicle, well, Route 458 has a lot of truck traffic, mostly farm to market trucks. We saw a few semi trucks go through. So we've designed this roundabout to handle the WB 67 truck, which is like the biggest, that's a 67-foot wheelbase. That's like the biggest truck legal in Douglas County. It's an interstate tractor trailer, semi truck. It would use the circulating roadway and the truck apron. And the roundabout would also accommodate farm equipment, emergency vehicles, school buses, and recreational vehicles. We would propose lighting with LED lights. A lot of progress has been made with LED lights over the old high pressure sodium lightings. Because of sensitivity to the rural environment and the people living there, we would suggest just 30-foot high poles and use very focused LED lenses that focused only on the pavement at the locations where you're entering and exiting the roundabout. Those would have lenses that would prohibit any upward light, and they would have be designed to limit backlight and glare. Here's the fastest path analysis of the road of the roundabout. The concept of a roundabout is that you want traffic going through it at a consistent speed, generally between 19 and 24 miles per hour. As you exit the roundabout, those speeds can be greater. These are the radii of the middle of a passenger car vehicle going through the roundabout. And those are the speeds those cars could take those curves at if you were being very aggressive driving. And so we've got speeds of around 23 miles per hour consistently through the roundabout. This is the through movement. There's the north-south through movement. And there's the right turn movements. So that's one of the critical parts about a properly designed roundabout is getting those speeds right. And that is a trade-off between your ability to move the cars through at low speed and get your tractor trailers through the roundabout. And so here is a diagram showing the through movements of an interstate a semi truck going through. The green lines are the front wheels and the blue lines are the back wheels. So you can see that the green lines all stay on in the regular circulating roadway, but the back wheels of the vehicle track up onto the truck apron. And there's the same for the north-south movement and for the left turn movements, another left turn movement. So that's essentially the geometric roadway design. As far as the preliminary signing, you start out with a roundabout ahead sign. Then you have a yield ahead sign. Then we followed that up with our Trailblazer County Road junction signing. And then we have the double arrow sign that goes in the central island and then our yield signs. So there's really nothing spectacular about that signing. It's just the way it's been standardized. On some rural roundabouts, we do put in rumble strips. At this location with the homes in close proximity, we don't recommend that because they're really noisy. And plus, this intersection will be driven by mostly local people that will drive through it every day and become familiar with its location. So. We did do a quick evaluation, well, not a quick evaluation, an evaluation of the utility impacts that the project might have. And this location is, as Chad had mentioned, it's on the route between Lawrence and Baldwin. It's also on the route of water service from Lawrence to Baldwin, and there's 16-inch water line on the east side of it. We just know, and there's a large number of fiber optic and other communication cables there. For the most part, you should be able to design around the utilities. Otherwise, we'll need to have them relocated prior to the start of the road construction. The ones noted in red on the diagram are in private easements that would be relocated at the expense of the county. And the ones noted in blue are on the county right of way and can probably be relocated at the expense of the utility. Also, some right of way acquisition would be required in all 4 quadrants of the intersection for the roundabout. On the other alternatives, right of way would only be required on the west side of the intersection. West and south side of the intersection, excuse me. That's it for that, for that information.
I'll just add a little bit. These guys did exactly what we asked them to do, and that's a lot of detailed information that supports the findings. They were even more definitive, though, in their determination that a roundabout's a good solution. It really would be great here. You know, it'd be new for Douglas County. It would not be necessarily new for similar areas, rural settings in our region. As far as cost goes, there are some numbers in their findings that show the cost differences. If you pay close attention to the memo that I provided, there's a little different number for what the cost difference is. And that's because in our scenario, we're actually tearing the intersection out either way, the whole intersection, putting ditches in, putting shoulders on. In their cost analysis to do the cost benefit, they look purely at a right turn added versus a roundabout built. So there's where that difference lies. So having said that, I'm roughly estimating about $800,000 additional to do a roundabout over a right turn lane. And as far as how to pay for that would be within our ability to adjust culvert and bridge projects to make this fit the schedule and make this happen. Long term, it is a better solution. It saves more lives. It reduces costs for accidents, and that's really the benefit we're looking for. I think it fits this location well because there is a land use change right at this intersection. If you cross the county from east to west, it's very rural, and then suddenly it's not. And this is the point where that happens. It's also a turning point for the route to Baldwin. So it kind of is a landmark for folks doing that. If you're trying to give directions, it's that kind of place. So I think it fits well. It's a good solution. Obviously, the cost and the additional work and then public input are going to be factors. So at this time, what we're asking for is sort of a nod from the commission that this looks like an idea we should pursue. And if so, we would get some additional design work. We would have a public meeting to present some draft plans, get more feedback. We've got the 4 landowners at the intersection who've already given feedback. Yeah, you may have already heard or will hear from them concerns. There are a couple that have concerns. One of those is about lighting, and Terry mentioned lighting. So we don't want to light this up like the city. We want to light it up so that it's safe. And I believe there's a balance there that we can achieve. So that's kind of what we're after tonight, is just where do we stand on this and should we go forward?
I will open it up to questions from commissioners. Do you have questions?
Mr. Grassel, I see you coming up to give public comment. First, commissioners are going to ask some questions and
okay.
have discussion, but we will ask
Okay.
for public comment in a moment.
Okay. I
Thank
thought
you.
it was public.
Yeah. This is Commissioner Reed. Thank you for that thorough presentation. I think I'm very familiar with this intersection and it is my preferred route to Baldwin. And so I always spend extra time pausing there. And it's always felt like I've always been a little trepidatious when crossing that intersection. So I appreciate the proactiveness in trying to assess all of the options. I wanted to, well, I appreciate Chad that you told us the initial landowners that you've had some preliminary conversations with. There's been a few concerns expressed. I was just also curious from your experience with other roundabouts in rural areas, if there are particular concerns that come up by adjacent landowners, you know, as we're in this beginning process. I would expect lighting to be one of them, but just curious if there are other particular concerns that we can anticipate based on your experience. And I also wanted to ask, I'm familiar with some of the roundabouts you listed, and I have family in Marion County and near Hutchinson. So I'm familiar with some roundabouts that all are on at least one state or US highway, which I think is kind of all the examples you gave. I'm wondering if in your work or Chad in your research and conversation so far, there's been other counties where a rural roundabout like this exists on county roads like this is the intersection of rather than a main US or state highway.
Sure. There was the example that Terry showed, and that's actually in Reno County on a very similar county route near residential properties with similar access points, similar traffic levels. There's also in Shawnee County, if you leave our county on Route 442 and you go on 45th Street, there's a string of roundabouts now at Crocrow Road and further west, and those are on a similar kind of rural county route. It's becoming obviously more urban there, but so is this. So there are plenty of examples of that, and we may be able to get more examples. One of the things that you might hear from folks with public comment is farm equipment being able to go through, truck traffic being able to go through. We've got the landowner at the northwest corner has a rig that he brings in that's large. And one of the best exhibits Terry showed is the truck travel through the intersection, the truck apron in the middle, and it does function really well. So that'd be the kind of thing you might hear.
Okay, we will open this up for public comment.
Peter Grassel, 972 East 1900 Road, Eudora. This was a timely presentation. Last Saturday afternoon, I had one wheel off the road headed west as a car came off of the northbound road, and sloppy driving on their part. You know, I just wish there was a sheriff's deputy around because the car didn't have a tag. But this particular intersection is described very well by Commissioner Reed, trepidatious, very, very dangerous. I've been out here in the county for 3 years, and this is the worst intersection ever. But what I prefer is what exists at East 1900 Road and North 1000 and over at 1500 and North 1000. Bring people to a complete stop. Stop, get them to stop, because these people, especially headed east on North 1000 Road, they're flying. They don't pay attention. And I don't know how many times I have almost been rear-ended. So it's very, very dangerous. But I think a roundabout would not stop the people. They'll just keep moving. They'll just keep flowing about. And you need to get them to stop. So I prefer that you investigate four-way stop signs, put a stop, four-way stop, and put a stop on every corner. Thank you.
I think it's the other computer. Yeah, that one. You need to just stop. There you go.
There we go. All right, good evening, commissioners. My name is Steve DeVore. I live at 996 East 1587 Road. So we live on the property that adjoins this project straight to the west. I appreciate the presentation because the information that I had received in advance of this was a little bit different. The information that I had received had indicated that there were going to be 19 highway grade 40-foot tall light poles around this roundabout. Well, you can imagine living out in the county, if you have 19 highway grade light poles 40 foot high in the air, what that does to the lighting in the entire neighborhood. So I'm glad to see that that was adjusted and that there's an opportunity to continue to adjust that lighting. I also want to just bring up some observations. I know the traffic study was done and I think that's very important, but I want to make sure that we're factoring in, and they made the comment that there's a transition there from agricultural to more dense residency. Because all that is agricultural back to the east, it's also in a floodplain, so there can be no additional development occurring around this intersection. And I know that there was a recommendation from the county commissioners not long ago that we want to focus on infilling within the city limits and reducing the number of dividable lands out in the county for subdivisions. And so I think it's very important that we look at that traffic study. I agree with the other gentleman that spoke, and I'm sure with my family and everybody in our neighborhood, we absolutely want the safest intersection possible. We've lived out there now for about 10 years, and we've seen some accidents occur. And I know they put up some additional signage, and that did help. But we want the absolute safest, intersection that we can have, but also being able to restore and maintain the elements that we all moved out into that county and that neighborhood for in the first place. So I'll be excited to be able to hear. I haven't had a chance to visit with the consultants prior to this, even though we have some land that adjoins to where this project begins. But I'll sure look forward to having that opportunity to visit with you all and see what we can do to mitigate some of the concerns that we have out in our neighborhood for the lighting and some of the other issues that we have. Thank you all.
Yeah, good evening, Tom Holland. I live at 961 East 1600 Road. So I'm about a third of a mile south from the intersection with the discussion of the roundabout. I would like to, I guess, first of all, have a little more information about the accidents there. I was aware of an accident. I believe it was somebody eastbound basically pulling a horse trailer, and there was somebody going on the northbound on the south approaching that, basically pulled in front of them. I know subsequent to that accident, I believe there were injuries involved with that accident, but subsequent accidents, there's additional signage put up to the drivers that are going north, to that intersection. I'd like to know more about the accidents since that additional signage has been posted. My perception of the intersection is basically you're talking about, that is the back way to Baldwin. And so really the major traffic flow there is basically going on the westbound intersection and then heading south, and likewise coming from Baldwin going north and then heading west. The road north of 1000 Road, very little traffic there from my perception. I would also say that's very much traffic is driven by really kind of morning and evening, basically people coming to and going to work. Obviously there is traffic throughout the day, but primarily it flows on that west leg, then down the south leg. My concern with this is that the only concern I would have, and once again, and please understand, I fully support the project itself as far as the widening of the lanes and everything coming down through it. I enjoy what has been done on Haskell Road already. My concern with this though is the cost. I just wonder if we're basically going squirrel hunting with an elephant gun. Keep in mind, you have during the day when you don't have basically the people going to work back and forth, that 458 road is basically dead. And so you're talking basically making everybody slow down, okay, all directions, but particularly east to west, where you're going to Eudora is basically coming through over to the US 59. So my other concern with this is that I wonder if this is maybe some backhanded attempt by the city to basically start to maybe urbanize that area. And my ignorance, I don't know if that area is tier 2 or tier 3 or how this works. But to me, when we talk about other rural roundabouts, and I appreciate the list that was shown, I'm familiar with some of those, but I do know that on those ones that are on the list, there's much more uniform traffic coming from all 4 directions we have coming into that. You just don't have that situation here. We know the budgets are very tight and limited.
You have 30 seconds.
Okay, so, but I would just wrap with, $800,000 is the delta for that project. Maybe it's worth it, but I would just suggest that with the social service needs and other things you have here in the county, since county taxpayers will be paying for that $800,000, what it is that the best use of the money? Thank you for your time.
Do we have any additional public comment here in the courthouse? Seeing none, we'll move to online. I see we have a hand up.
Elizabeth Barkley, I'm going to move you over into the panel. Elizabeth, go ahead and unmute yourself and provide public comment.
Yes, my name is Elizabeth Barkley. I'm at 989 East 1600 Road. So I am 2 houses south of the intersection towards Baldwin. I've recently purchased this location. I've been here for a little over a year and a half. And I would agree with all the other previous public comments that the traffic levels are the AM and PM traffic levels, but putting a roundabout, most of the speed and most of the potential accidents that could occur are based off of a right-hand turn. That is the people coming from Lawrence, turning right, heading down to Baldwin, or people coming from the east, which would be the Eudora side, and going right, turning down to Baldwin, or going straight and heading westbound. In putting a roundabout there is not going to slow people down. I agree with the other public speakers as well, that a complete 4-way stop is going to be at your best interest. I do have concerns about the approach of the roundabout with it coming up to my property line as well. I understand that this is rated for tractor trailers, but I also have equipment in and out of my property. And with that medium division right in front of my driveway or up to my property line, that caused for concern. And as a new property owner, I also feel that that's something that should have possibly been disclosed to me when I was purchasing this property, because I would have looked elsewhere, coming from living in the city of Baldwin, moving to what would be considered a rural environment. And now thinking in another less than 2 years of owning my property, I will be potentially in more of an urban area than I expected, is discerning. I also agree that funding wise, our funding costs could be utilized in other areas of the county, and a 4-way stop could help with that. That's all I have to say.
Ron Griffin, I'm going to move you into the panel. Ron, you can go ahead and provide your public comment. You can unmute, Ron. sorry, commissioners, it appears he's having trouble on, oh, there you go.
Oh, am I okay now?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I live on the southwest corner, 997 East 1600 Road. And I've lived here since '86. So we've seen it grow. More houses, more people, more traffic. But that's us, you know, and it's growing. I'm getting older. So, but I'm against having all the lights. I don't want a Walmart parking lot in my front yard. And that's the best example I can give you. But I think a right turn lane, and I agree with the other people of having a four-way stop. It worked at 1500 Road. It used to be a two-way stop there, and now it's a four-way stop. And so have your study look at and see what the accident ratio is with a four-way stop there. It's got good signage. And then, so why did they, looking at a roundabout at our intersection, why didn't they do it at 1500 Road in Haskell? So Chad has been very cooperative and been very courteous, because I've called him quite often. And so as I talked to him the last, I just hope this is not a done deal. And he assured me that it's not. It might be a study. But I think the cost factor that Tom Holland represented is another factor that we need to look at. And that's all I got to say. And I'm speaking for my wife. She's sitting next to me. So that's all I have, commissioners. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no additional hands up in the Zoom for public comment, we will bring this back for commissioner discussion. We'll open it up to commissioners for discussion. Yes, I do just want to say thank you for all of the public comment. Quite a few of our commenters did bring up the four-way stop sign, and I noticed in the report that a four-way stop sign actually had the highest cost to safety ratio. Could we hear a little bit more about why the suggestion is for a roundabout rather than a four-way stop sign?
That is an excellent point. And it goes to level of service and the fact that the delay for drivers at the intersection is significantly more. We've got a stop sign a mile west of there. And so for a traveler hitting two stop signs, it starts to tend to drive up anxiety and tension in their driving. And, you know, it's the delay is something that drivers won't be happy with. The acceleration is something the homeowners won't be happy with, because currently it's the sound of the traffic going by. Now it's the sound of the slowing down and the accelerating. There's also the fact that the four-way stop does not eliminate the potential for rear end accidents. Someone stopped at the intersection, a 55-mile-an-hour road behind them. And so, you know, obviously we try to not have as many stop signs as possible. And so that's one reason the roundabout is a more functional solution and a preferred solution. And the additional cost is, it's really offset in the study. When you look at the cost to benefit ratios, it's offset by the accident costs and the fact that our emergency services aren't out there, you know, personnel and equipment and man hours, the personal losses of property, vehicles, health, you know, risks. So those are the costs that are factored in when they did the study. So yes, a four-way stop has the best ratio, but it doesn't provide the best level of service.
That was my question also. So I think I would just expand on that, and I guess in future discussions, I would be interested in hearing a bit more about the differences in safety between a four-way stop and a roundabout, and why I'm particularly interested in what safety reasons are there for favoring a roundabout in terms of accident reduction versus a four-way stop. So you just mentioned it in terms of rear ending is more likely and more frequent at four-way stops. So that's just something I'd be interested in hearing more about in future discussions, along with that, making sure we understand why the preference is for a roundabout, even with that larger cost.
If I could offer to have David come up, he's really the Kansas expert on rural roundabouts and may offer some better insight also.
David Church again, Senior Traffic Engineer with WSP. Yeah, great questions. With regard to the safety impacts of roundabouts, as we mentioned in the study, we anticipate two-thirds less accidents with roundabouts. However, the more severe injury and fatality, 80 to 90% reduction with roundabouts, where with a full-way stop, it does have good safety impacts with estimating around 50% overall reduction. The thing with four-way stops is you do have there are folks that do run stop signs, and so you can still have severe crashes at four-way stops, where just the way the roundabout's designed, as you come in, you're at more of an angle. And so that's why those severe crashes are so much less, 80 to 90% reduction. And studies performed by Kansas State University confirm that. Kansas is one of the leading states in the country in rural roundabouts, not only on the state highway system, but as Chad mentioned, Shawnee County is actually replacing some of their traffic signals in more of the rural areas, like Topeka Boulevard and 46th Street north of Topeka used to be a traffic signal, and they've replaced that with a roundabout that is designed very similar to what we're proposing here. So 46th Street north of Topeka is essentially a roundabout corridor, and they've also done that on South Wanamaker, on South 45th Street. So really those county road intersections that could result in needing a traffic signal just based on traffic volumes, Shawnee County is installing rural roundabouts and having great success with that.
Oh, I was just going to say that I want to confirm that what we're considering today is just saying we want to continue studying this, not making a decision between the roundabout and the four-way stop. We're just asking Public Works to continue to consider the safety elements and start gathering more of that public comment with folks in the area. Correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We've made an initial investment, obviously, in some design work. And as we go forward with those costs would continue and time, and we really didn't want to go any further without bringing the commission on board, the landowners, and then very quickly get to a point where we can have a public meeting, show people on paper what this looks like, and have a real detailed, meaningful discussion at that point. So this is just kind of, is this something you're absolutely opposed to, or do you want us to continue?
Chad, before you go, thanks for your work on this. Thanks for the detailed report. I would encourage you, as you look at, involving that public meeting, and I think you probably are, going outside of just those who live around the intersection. We've heard some of those folks tonight, but also considering the area, the people who travel on that road, because I think we heard that the level of service will change. Well, that may not impact the folks who live right around there as much as it will all the people who use that road. And so that's an interesting thing to me. I appreciate Senator Holland's question about, since the signage was put in, how has that changed and that may be hard to tell because I think it was like 5 years of data there. We may maybe difficult to get a number there, but I'd be interested in that. And I will say the number jumped out at me, the cost increase of doing it. That when I read it, I was like, wow, that's a lot more. And I think we just as a community have to sort of determine like what is the cost for that. You know, the engineering seems to show that there'll be a cost and increased safety. How much are we willing to take on there? So that's just some of my feedback.
So it sounds like the question before the commission is, do we want to continue those costs of the designs and moving this forward? Or do we want to say there is potential costs? Let's slow it down and potentially just go with something that wouldn't be a roundabout. That would be the four-way stop sign. I'm open to discussion.
I would say I'd want more public comment on it. I want more, I guess I would say take this same presentation and do it. We just need to get people talking about it more and understanding it more. It sounds like from Mr. DeVore's comments that there's been changes since the information they got. And so I don't mind continuing to talk about it and would encourage that. And as we learn more and, you know, get more pictures of where they are, you know, I don't know if I always hesitate to make these kind of suggestions, but you know, is it good to bring in some neighbors who lived near one somewhere? You know, we said it was Shawnee County, there was one, so they could talk to the local landowners to say, you know, how is because the lighting looks intimidating when you first look at it. Mr. Ron talked about it being a Walmart parking lot, you know, and so, but I think it would be helpful to have people who have one nearby or one they could travel to nearby to see what that looks like, because you're right, there have been a lot of changes in LED lighting, and that really does change people's perception of projects when they see one that's been done with sort of newer technology. So that would be my preference, is before we continue to design, get more input from the community on that.
Commissioner Reed here. I would agree with that completely, and think that I am interested in continued conversation about it, but I'm interested in the more public engagement, especially based on the amount of public engagement we received at the initial conversation that we're having without formal notification to all neighbors, and like Commissioner Kelly said, maybe beyond that to the community. So, and especially to your point, Chad, that this would be a first for Douglas County. So I'm interested in a lot more community conversation and feedback so that we're considering all of the options before investing more money in further design and moving a plan forward.
It sounds like we have some consensus on the commission then. Do you need anything else from us?
No, that's excellent. Thank you. I think what I'd like to do is nail down the lighting plan very specifically to be able to answer those questions, and also nail down the costs very specifically. So we'll do that next, and then start talking to the public more. So I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you so much. I know we are nearing the very end of our agenda, but I'm going to ask for us to take a quick, like 5-minute break. We have been going for 2 hours now. So if it is okay with my fellow commissioners, we will come back in 5 minutes, which would be 7:43. We are back, and we will move on to item 3.7, the Housing First Pilot Project. Jill.
Good evening, commissioners. I'm happy to finally have a contract in front of you to approve. Oh, sorry. I'll do that. Let me turn my camera on. Okay. Good evening, commissioners. I'm happy to be with you tonight with a final contract from the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services, also known as KDADS, to receive $500,000 in one-time funding from that agency to partake in a Housing First pilot project. This project, as I outlined in my meeting memo, again, it's one-time funding. It will be administered by Douglas County in a collaborative partnership with the City of Lawrence and a stakeholder group of representatives from a variety of housing and homelessness providers in Douglas County that the city and the county have been convening over the course of the last couple months. trying to envision strategies to address homelessness and envision ideas to utilize American Rescue Plan funds. The first part of our work has been to develop a proposal that is reflective of the Housing First principles in response to an invitation from the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services. It's a really important opportunity for us, and KDEDS has given us a good amount of discretionary authority in envisioning a pilot project and how we want to use those dollars that I'm really excited about and grateful to KDEDS and the leadership of Andy Brown and the work of our stakeholder group. You saw in the memo that we've carved out that funding to go towards the seeding of an ACT team, assertive care treatment team, and the development of a local housing choice voucher program. The ACT, we have a pilot team that's already met, and we'll meet on a monthly basis. And then we have 2 subgroups that are going to meet as part of the way that those dollars are chunked out. The ACT team development is going to be led by Matthew Falk of Burton Nash Community Mental Health Center, with strong participation from Douglas County's Director of Behavioral Health Projects, Bob Tryansky, and a really outstanding group of community stakeholders from agencies like DECA, Artists Helping the Homeless, Kansas Statewide Homeless Coalition, and probably forgetting others. I know the Lawrence Community Shelter and a whole host of others that are invested in the development of that program. And then our housing voucher program I'm going to be leading that project team, and we're going to be envisioning what would a local flexible fund voucher program look like for Douglas County to address the needs of our most complex community members that more often than not have insurmountable barriers to accessing housing vouchers to give them a place to recuperate and recover from the challenges that they're experiencing. I did want to mention that the Douglas County Sheriff's Office Reentry team is working closely on the ACT project, and we'll be working on the housing voucher program as well, along with Kansas Legal Services to help us understand what are some of the legal barriers that we can try to tackle as part of this program, what kind of funding is needed for that. We also talk a bit about landlord mitigation strategies that I think are only going to be have a greater impact thanks to the efforts of the Lawrence Douglas County Housing Authority and their new landlord liaison program led by Mariel Ferrero. So we've really just got a lot going for us, and we're already organized and hitting the ground running, and I'm happy to stand with any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jill.
Yeah.
I will open this up for questions. Questions from commissioners. Having no questions, we will open this up for public comment. I don't see anyone here in the courthouse for public comment. Do we have anyone online for public comment on this item? It does not look like it. We'll bring it back to commissioners for comments. I do just want to say thank you so much for all of your work on this. I know that it has been a long time getting through all of the final hurdles on this, but I am super excited for this work. I am excited for how collaborative it is with so many organizations in our community and collaboration between the county and the city. So thank you for seeing this through. I'm excited to see what comes of it.
It's Commissioner Reed here. I would just expand on those comments and express my gratitude to you, Jill, for being a convener in this work and in this community and helping continuously bring all the people necessary to the conversation to make sure that we are thinking of all the different layers of addressing complex issues. So I am really proud to have come into this, onto the Board of County Commissioners at a time when I think our staff, along with the city staff and along with so many partners in the community, have been doing a lot of exciting groundwork for this, for exactly this, among other things that I think we have coming down the pike. Some of the investments we made in our budget for continuous resource navigation and supportive housing, some other partnerships that are going on with the Kansas Emergency Rental Assistance Program and homelessness prevention. I feel really proud of our staff and of our community as a whole, and really grateful to the community voices that have kept this conversation alive, I think, in our community, and talking about housing first and how important it is to build a framework around that and to invest dollars in what that really means to get people into homes and then support them in staying in those homes and support them in building the lives that they see for themselves. And I'm really, really excited as a service provider to know that we are helping fill a gap and do a bit of additional barrier removal by creating that local choice voucher where we have some local control over that. And that it's huge. I'm really excited about the potential game changer that is, as somebody who works with community members to navigate systems that have a tendency to put up barriers that are really difficult to remove and get around for folks. And so for us to be thinking about how we help fill that gap and how we address the most vulnerable folks that are hitting those barriers in other systems is really important to me. And I'm very grateful for that and excited to see what we do with these state dollars.
That was great commentary. Thank you, Commissioner Reed. That was, I don't know that I would add much to that, except to say that for the public who may not be aware, we've seen this item be pulled from our agenda 3 times. So I appreciate Jill's work on that. But also, I think, you know, when we first heard about this, and we appreciate Andy's work on it at KDADS, there was a lot of discussion about how this was going to work out, how it was going to work out with the city and the county, and who was going to, you know, have ownership of the dollars and those types of things. And it's very comforting to me to hear administration come back to us and say they feel good about this, because I know that shows a ton of work on their part, but also a ton of work with the other partners that were involved. And so this is really exciting. I don't think there's another county in Kansas that's getting this type of award. Is that right? Yeah. And I think that speaks to all the work that's being done here. This has major potential, and really just is there an award for the work that we're doing, but also gives us hope for the future. But the demand is, this won't cover the demand. I mean, that's what's really sad about this, is that you know, this is a really challenging topic for our community, but I think we're going to eat the elephant one bite at a time, and we'll keep working on it. So thank you for your work on this, Jill and Sarah, your whole team. I know this was a long time coming.
Commissioners, I did want to pass along that KDADS is also funding, entering into a 3-year agreement with the city of Lawrence to fund a position, a project manager position that's going to provide a lot of assistance to and information related to this project, but also guiding some community-wide efforts that will be coordinated between the city and the county. That position is going to be funded within the city of Lawrence, but I want to make sure that I recognize Brandon McGuire, the assistant city manager for the city of Lawrence, because I couldn't do any of this project and shepherding this proposal forward and the request for that position without having the city and the county in lockstep together, and really trying to walk the walk and talk the talk of the shared resolution that we entered into with the city a few months ago, that we would work cooperatively. This is one really big example of that, and I'm really looking forward to more.
I'll be happy to make a motion. I move to approve a Housing First grant agreement with the Kansas Department of Aging and Disability Services, KDADS, for one-time funding of $500,000.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And we will move on to appointments. Do we have any appointments to consider this evening?
I don't think I have any for you today. We're working on a couple though, so we should have some soon.
Sounds good. We will move on to miscellaneous. Sarah, what do you have for us?
Commissioners, there's a memo in the packet. In addition to some items that were on there last week, I want to state publicly, we are not meeting next week. It's in Wednesdays, where we have 5 Wednesdays, we generally take one off, and we elected to early in the year to take the first off. In addition to that, looking ahead on calendars, there's some staff conflicts and a commissioner conflict on Wednesday, October 6th. So that meeting we will also cancel as well. And that's really all I have tonight, commissioners.
Sarah, I know that a number of us are planning on going to the Chamber's event on September 1st. And so we may just want to add that to our list of things.
We can definitely add that to our open meetings list. If there are any other events coming up too, just let us know that we think if there'll be more than one commissioner at them. I think so far for the training on public officials, I don't have two commissioners at the same one, but I'm still waiting to hear Commissioner Kelly, when you get a chance to get that scheduled, that's one I'm also tracking.
I don't have any miscellaneous this week.
I do not either, other than a thank you for taking my birthday meeting off as we get into Virgo season.
The day after mine, so yeah.
I just want to make a brief bit of comments about some progress that I've seen in the community since our last meeting. I did have a few exchanges with some folks who made public comment. And I think we would all agree that that was an upsetting meeting. That's not the way I like to see Douglas County. And I do not want to rehash that meeting, but I do want to say that I appreciate those folks who have communicated with sometimes all of us and sometimes maybe individually with some comments about their behavior that evening. And I appreciate, I know it takes a lot to apologize. And so I just want to say thank you to those people for spending a little time self-reflecting about the behavior that we saw that evening and how that impacted not only our community, but our commission. It did have an impact on our commission. And I think it's important to pause and recognize those people who did that self-reflection and apologized for some of the comments and some of the attitudes that were displayed that evening.
And if we have nothing more, we are adjourned.